Hi, everyone. In case you missed it last week, I've rolled out a new feature on Unconfirmed, a weekly news recap. This summer, I conducted a survey to find out what you listeners wanted, and a number of you said you'd be interested in a weekly news recap on the show. I've now added a few minutes onto every episode of Unconfirmed, where I go over the big news stories that week. So today, after I close out with my guest, be sure to stick around for My Week in Crypto recap. Now, on to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unconfirmed, the podcast that reveals how the marquee names in crypto are reacting to the week's top headlines and gets the inside scoop on what they see on the horizon. I'm your host, Laura Shin. For a lot of crypto fans, it's hard to find one place where you can trade, plan, and discuss crypto strategy. Get started with eToro and the world's #1 social trading platform.
CipherTrace cutting-edge cryptocurrency intelligence powers anti-money laundering, blockchain analytics, and threat intel. Leading exchanges, virtual currency businesses, banks, and regulators themselves use CipherTrace to comply with regulation and to monitor compliance.
Crypto.com. Get their app and buy crypto at true cost. Get a metal MCO Visa card with up to 5% back on all your spending. Download the Crypto.com app today. Today's guest here with me at DevCon in Osaka, Japan is Deborah Simpier, COO and co-founder of Althea Network. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you for so much for having me.
What problem are you trying to solve, and how does Althea Network address that problem?
So we're trying to solve the problem of big telecom being highly monopolized, and right now we see that legacy internet users are paying high prices for slow speeds because last mile networks are siloed by ownership and have long lock-in. When you have internet service to your home, you're locked in with just one device and one internet service provider. But with Althea, instead of one company owning all of the infrastructure of the network, Althea software lets us leverage existing homes and businesses in an efficient way, and then we can build out decentralized internet service providers where neighbors pay neighbors for bandwidth.
And so you live in an area where people are using this. Tell me about where you live and why you guys don't have easy-to-access internet.
Yeah, so I live in Clatskanie, Oregon, which is a rural community. That's typical, like many rural communities, where there's this sparse population, there's some lower income folks, blue collar people, and some challenging geography. And many people there see a megabit per second speeds as their normal home internet, and cost is also a barrier. But that's not like the whole story. There's actually is fast, high speed internet through the center of town. It just can't. It's not well coordinated to be able to reach the people that don't have good internet service. So this is why we set up the decentralized Althea network there, and it's pretty exciting to see now that we have people that own like a farm or a business or a house are setting up a ton of equipment and forwarding bandwidth to their neighbors and getting paid automatically for doing that.
And this also uses Ethereum.
Oh, yes. So basically, people get Ethereum from like the Coinbase app or, any kind of app for exchange on your phone. And then they get that into the router by scanning a QR code on the dashboard. And then once it's actually in the router, it bridges to XI. So it has a stable component.
I don't know what XI is.
So XI is a stable coin on the Poland network.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
So this allows people to buy the easily available Ethereum using their debit cards, but still have that stabilize out in their router so that their internet bill doesn't fluctuate between $20 to $40 based on the price of Ethereum.
Oh, okay. So they're basically paying each other in dollars using this stablecoin.
Yeah, it feels very much to the end user like they are that they put $20 on their router and that pays their neighbors for the bandwidth.
And so physically, like, what is the setup? And, like, where do the different players on the network get their hardware or equipment, and how do they pay for it? Like, do they have to pay it up front and then they, like, wait to get paid back by the neighbors? Or, like, how does that part work?
Yeah, so we also realize that in the internet service providing space, there's kind of a need for, if something goes wrong, you're going to call somebody, or, maybe you need some help with installing equipment or some place to buy the equipment from. And so we have also another incentive for what we call the group of organizers, right? So in this particular network in Oregon, it's a cooperative, and they're there to help people get installed and also there if there's questions and that kind of thing as well.
So basically, but they have to like pay it up front and then they get paid back?
So for people that want to participate and resell bandwidth, they buy their equipment, and then the network organizers help them set it up. And then, for example, we have a relay. Her name is Linda. She lives on a farm, and she hosts a connecting antenna and a couple of sectors antennas that connect her neighbor up.
And a relay is what? Somebody who's giving internet access to others? Okay.
Yeah. So they're taking bandwidth from the sort of high speed fiber backhaul, and then they're connecting their neighbors up.
And the backhaul is like where kind of your little community connects to the main internet. Is that?
That's a good description. Yeah. So Linda, she now that she has her hardware set up, her router in her home is like a normal consumer router, but it's running Althea software. So as her connected neighbors use the bandwidth, she gets paid automatically to her router wallet. So about once every couple of months, she cashes out her $150.
Okay. And is the payments, is that like per usage, or is that like a monthly payment? And do I, if I'm using it and I'm not a relay, do I have to manually pay it, or is it automatically done?
Yeah, so that's the key, is that users load their routers up with, they buy Ethereum, and they load their routers up with token. And as they use it, then that is, as they use bandwidth on a per gigabyte basis, then the routers automatically compute the billing and pay the upstream relay.
Oh, wow. So it's like pay as you go, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And this allows different relays. Now, one thing I did want to mention really briefly is that one of the key components of Althea is what they call a price-aware routing protocol, so that if you're an end user and you're connected to more than one upstream provider, our protocol will switch automatically second by second to the cheapest link. So it adds in that sort of automatic competition.
Oh, wow. So the neighbors can or the relays can charge different amounts?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, so then they're incentivized to
Yeah. Okay. We have one relay that will go every weekend with a bottle of wine to his neighbors and see if they want to get connected to his relay. So it adds also that kind of viral growth.
Oh, that's cute. That's funny. Yeah. And then what about privacy issues? Because if I'm, using somebody else's internet, essentially, is that something that, could be a security issue?
So first I want to just make sure I clear up any kind of miscommunication. It's not a Wi-Fi hotspot. So when users connect to your neighbor, you're using long-range antenna equipment on your roof. So you're not using the Wi-Fi hotspot of your home connection. And then also we encrypt all of those links in the local network using WireGuard, and then that's decrypted at a server in a data center.
And how much are people generally earning from this?
So Linda's a good example. She has about 6 or 7 connected people, and she makes, she offsets her own usage. So her own usage is basically free for her, and then she'll, make maybe $100 every 2 months or $150, something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So she's not paying for her usage.
Yeah, she's not paying, and then she's also making some money.
Okay. And how many users do you have overall?
So we have around 40.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We got started about March of this year, and we're also rolling out with some new networks coming soon too.
Oh, cool. Well, so tell me how you even got started doing this.
Well, I had been in the net neutrality and internet freedoms kind of space for a while, and then in a legislative perspective, trying to move regulation to protect the freedoms of our internet, and also just a mesh networking enthusiast. We're really excited about that. But I had been doing that for a while and realized that I wasn't able to make traction that way. I wasn't able to affect change to protect our key freedoms or change the sort of monopoly big telecom has. And it was at that time that I met the other 2 co-founders, Jahan Trembeck and Justin Kilpatrick, who had been working on Althea before me, and I had a company at that time called Cascadian MeshNet, and that's when we started working together.
All right, so in a moment we're going to talk about how Althea got started and where they're going next, but first a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible. Crypto.com. Have you seen the MCO Visa card? A metal card loaded with perks with up to 5% back and unlimited airport lounge access. They pay for your Spotify and Netflix too. What's not to love? With Crypto.com, not only can you spend your crypto, but you can grow it too. Earn up to 8% per year on the most popular coins like BTC, ETH, XRP, and up to 12% per year on stablecoins. Join the over 1 million others and download the Crypto.com app today.
Will the world follow France and advocate banning privacy coins? Will government-backed stablecoins become the new fiat? Are distributed and peer-to-peer exchanges just a flash in the pan? The answer is maybe. Virtual currencies can flourish and create a new, private, and more versatile economy. But that grand vision can't happen without keeping crypto clean. And that requires support of governments and accountability for bad actors. Privacy-enhanced compliance using cryptographic controls has the potential to preserve anonymity without compromising legitimate investigations. CipherTrace is working on this vision of the future. Sign up to stay up to date on the Privacy-Enhanced Compliance Initiative and receive authoritative crypto AML reports quarterly. www.ciphertrace.com/keepcryptoclean.
Back to my conversation with Deborah Simpier. So when you were saying, like, you know, you got involved in this, like, did you kind of just recently move to the community and then realize, like, oh, they have this problem? Or, like, how did you guys figure out that this could be a solution for you?
Well, I had moved to the community about 13 years ago. So no, I had been there for quite some time and had always envisioned that a community network and a sustainable network like this would be the answer. But before the technology, even to run a wireless internet service provider, would not work well in this community because of some of the geographical challenges. The way that the network would have to be configured around a centralized tower would not make physical sense. Althea allows us to set this up in an agile kind of decentralized way that allows us to get around some of these physical barriers even too, that was not possible. So really it was Althea's technology that made this network possible.
And what were the physical barriers?
So Klatskanai lies in a valley. And there's these like large hills. So if you have one tower on one hill, you would not be able to see under the shadow of that particular tower or that particular hill. And it's pretty much just a bunch of hills and valleys and also large trees. And so these relays, then maybe they can see 4 or 5 houses around that corner, and then they bounce to another house. And in fact, we have one link, if you don't mind, I'd love to share with you.
Yeah.
That it bounces from the central, it goes from the central part of the town to out in the valley to up on the hill, to another relay up on the hill, and then from up on the hill another 3 miles out to where the river is to connect up someone out there. There would not have been any way possible to connect that person up before.
Oh, wow.
They went from having a megabit per second DSL connection to, 40 to 50 megabits per second of broadband internet.
Oh, wow.
Because that was possible.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, there's something very Rube Goldbergian about it, but like it works,
Yeah, a little bit. I think that our networks, coming online, we have some urban networks and, that may look a little bit more standard and than the network we have in Klatskanai. There's definitely some challenges there.
And so before we get to like your expansion, I'm curious, like when you were trying to explain the crypto aspect to the users on your network, was it something that was easy to do, or like kind of what were the difficulties in doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really, really kind of interesting aspect. So of all those users that we have, I think maybe one of those had any experience with the cryptocurrency at all before. And many of them are senior citizens. I'd say about a third of our network is senior citizens. Wow. I think that the reasons why we had such success, and I feel like it actually has been pretty successful and pretty overall frictionless, is that we do spend some brief 10 minutes of one-on-one time with someone kind of walking through the process. And then we've also found that using words like digital currency instead of crypto and a payment app instead of an exchange is more accessible for people.
Interesting, but otherwise they seem to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think they need to understand all the inner mechanics of it to be able to use it, like how most people don't necessarily need to understand the inner mechanics of iCloud in order to benefit from it. And I think that, so I think in that case, in that perspective, they do. And just if I can briefly, I think what is kind of interesting that when we talk about decentralization and what it actually looks like, originally we set this network up selling people on the idea of faster and cheaper internet, and they bought into that. But I'm also now hearing that they're excited about the ideals of ownership and choice and resiliency and all these sort of values that we think about decentralization that just kind of came into the equation as well.
Oh, interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. And I love what you said about how all they need is just like something that works and they don't need to understand how it works. And actually, that's why I wanted to interview you, because I was kind of like, oh, this is like a really interesting little experiment where it seems kind of separated from like what a lot of people might talk about here at the conference. But like this is like usage and adoption and like actual real people benefiting from, blockchains and cryptocurrency. So, so why don't you then tell me about how you guys are expanding and where you're expanding? Like is this only for rural areas, or can you, play in urban areas?
Yeah, so we're excited about some of this new network starting. We have one in an urban area south of Seattle called Tacoma, Washington, and this is a community of about neighborhood of like 12,000 people. So it's very urban, and within a couple of blocks there. And what we did with this is we started what we call an Althea hood. So the organizers there went and they did some canvassing, and they pre-registered people that pre-committed to this when it rolls out. And so we've already have 80 people pre-committed to using this system in their community, and they should looks like be rolling out shovel in the dirt in about a month. So that's very exciting. We do have another rural network in the Napa Valley in California, also coming online, and in Abuja, Nigeria. So,
oh, wow.
So a developing world as well. So that'll be interesting to see, I think, how that traction happens.
And how did you even connect with that community?
So we do organize our outreach, just saying, so people come to us and say, I think this is a good fit for my network, my neighborhood. And then we have a training program that helps them learn about it and start networks. And if it sounds like it's a good fit, then they continue to move forward with it.
And in what situations would it make sense for urban populations to
Well,
use this model?
we think of urban populations as all having high-speed internet access. And one of the things about being in that community in Tacoma was, every maybe 6 households didn't actually have any internet access, or they were only using mobile. And it wasn't very accessible to them. So I think that, and this was also a lower income area so that we could compete on price.
Oh, okay.
So you need, we do find that a lot of people are upset about their internet service provider currently, but that isn't enough to gain enough traction. You have to have some clearly better value proposition. So in this network, it was having a community run network that was also can be competitive on the price.
And how does it compare to typical prices?
So in that neighborhood, that folks are paying about $70 a month, and our network will be able to come in around $40.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Wow. So it's like saving $350 a year. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to say about your experience here at DevCon or what's going on with Althea?
Yeah, I think there's some really exciting things coming, and I'm so excited to see people working on UX and user-facing applications, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks again.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on Unconfirmed.
Thank you.
And thanks to you listeners for putting up with what might have been a kind of slightly interrupted show because there was a lot of noise in the background. But anyway, don't forget, next up is the news recap. So stick around for the second edition of This Week in Crypto after this short break. eToro gives you access to the most popular crypto assets on the market, and its virtual trading and discussion features let you discuss and test trading strategies with a community of over 11 million other traders. And headline news, they have officially launched in the USA. eToro offers the smartest trading tools and the ability to connect with the best traders around the world. Their trading fees are transparent and exceedingly low, too, and it's available in one easy-to-use app. Get started at eToro.com. That's ETORO.com, and build your crypto portfolio the smart way today. Hi, guys. Thanks for tuning into the second edition of my weekly news recap. This one is titled, Upcoming Crypto Trend, the Air Tax. And I also like my tagline for the newsletter, which is, you get a tax, you get a tax, you get a tax. Greetings from Osaka, Japan, where it is almost 4 a.m. And I have not been on Japan time at all this week, except for like one day. But thankfully, I'm leaving in just a few hours ahead of Typhoon Hagibis, I think it's pronounced. So my body will soon be reunited with the time zone that it just flat out refused to give up. All right, so before I get to the headlines, I just wanted to say, make sure to listen to this week's episode of Unchained with David Enalfado of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. He had a very pragmatic approach, which I found both refreshing and frustrating. When I asked him about the possibility of the US dollar losing its global reserve status, he said, "Who cares?" So I wasn't really expecting a Federal Reserve economist to be that blasé. But anyway, it's getting a lot of interesting comments on Twitter, so I think people are finding it really fascinating. Also, you just heard my interview with Deborah Simpier of the decentralized internet service provider Althea Network. I was searching out examples of how Ethereum is being used in the real world, and I really found it fascinating to learn about how her community in rural Oregon uses Ethereum. And I apologize that the interview may have sounded a bit rushed. It was not easy finding a quiet place to record, and even when I did, it was also really difficult keeping people from barging into the room. So I basically just tried to race through the interview. All right, first headline this week. New tax guidance on hard forks and airdrops not entirely clear. So the IRS released more crypto tax guidance, and it caused a bit of a ruckus. It did clear up at least some accounting related questions, but then there were these other rules around taxing airdrops and hard forks that people thought would be either difficult to implement or based on misconceptions. And so the difficult to implement part is that you can receive cryptocurrency via an airdrop, not be aware of that, and still have to pay taxes on it. So as Coin Center put it, quote, "It's like owing income tax when someone buries a gold bar on your property and doesn't tell you about it. It's absurd and impossible to reasonably comply." The other wrinkle that they pointed out was that they feel the IRS did not use the terms airdrop or hard fork correctly, and that the agency sometimes conflated the two. On crypto Twitter, Coin Center Director of Research Peter Van Valkenburg also pointed out that actually one of the scenarios that the IRS used in its guidance is something that has never happened. And blockchain president and chief legal officer Marco Santori said that the guidance seems not to take into account the possibility of receiving an airdrop into a self-custodied wallet. However, on the opposite side of the spectrum, crypto lawyer Patrick Merck did express the unpopular opinion that the hard forks and airdrops guidance actually makes sense. Next headline, Ethereum. Lots of Ethereum news this week. Ethereum released more details on the transition to 2.0. In the middle of DevCon 5 and the myriad other adjacent events, Ethereum creator Vitalik Buterin managed to publish 2 posts addressing some of the bigger questions overhanging the shift to 2.0. One addresses what exactly developers will need to do for a smooth transition, which is mainly increase gas costs and download the code to implement the upgrade. But otherwise, he says the changes for applications and users will be quite limited. The other question he answered via a blog post is whether applications will be able to talk to each other once sharding is implemented. And surprise, surprise, he says yes. We will see how that actually turns out. It's all TBD. Next up, the SEC denies Bitwise's Bitcoin ETF application. All I can say about this is that at least they gave it careful consideration. The SEC released a 112-page rationale for the disapproval. Bitwise's Matt Hogan released a statement saying, quote, "What matters is continued progress and the investment of time from regulators, and that's what we see here." And the company also tweeted, quote, "Historically, the journey to approval for first-of-a-kind ETPs, bonds, gold, non-transparent leverage has taken multiple years." It's a good thing that they have that perspective because Compound General Counsel Jake Chervinsky tweeted, quote, "At this point, it's reasonable to assume that Jay Clayton's SEC will never approve a Bitcoin ETF." Next story, MakerDAO multi-collateral DAI to launch as questions around governance continue. MakerDAO made a slew of announcements at DevCon, including the launch date for multi-collateral DAI, which is November 18th. You guys, if you did not listen to the 2 interviews I did with CEO Rune Christensen earlier this year, we do cover how multi-collateral DAI works. You should definitely check those out. They are, like, honestly, I really find this system very fascinating. And I think you'll enjoy those interviews. But just before DevCon, Bloomberg also published a piece on MakerDAO, and it went into more detail on some of the governance issues that have been dogging the project. And I felt that it really raised questions about how compliance with the existing regulatory system and the ideals of decentralization can coexist. All right, now time for some think pieces. Placeholder wrote a piece on why protocols are not businesses. So Chris Berniski of Placeholder Ventures, he wrote this great post on why protocols are not businesses, and instead says that what they do is provide structure for businesses. He says, quote, "They are systems of logic that coordinate exchange between suppliers, meaning businesses, and consumers of a service." And Ali Yahya of A16Z Crypto had a tweet storm on why he does not believe that there will be one dominant blockchain. As he puts it, quote, "The trade-off space that blockchains inhabit is far too large and high-dimensional for a single blockchain to span all of it." I found both pieces really interesting, or at least the latter was a tweet storm. You guys should definitely check those out. And you didn't think you were going to get away with no Libra headlines, did you? Because I did find one Wired piece I found interesting, which showed that Libra Association members largely have ties to Facebook. So this graphic shows the ways in which more than half the Libra Association members have direct or indirect ties to Facebook. In particular, investors DST and Andreessen Horowitz seem to be huge connectors. And the last headline will put one of the bigger sagas of the year to rest, hopefully. Quadriga CX widow to pay $9 million to customers. CoinDesk reports that Jennifer Robertson, quote, "will be turning over all assets except for roughly $162,700 in personal assets, which include cash, her retirement savings, a 2015 Jeep, some jewelry, personal furnishings, clothing, and some outstanding shares of Quadriga and affiliated entities." And finally, I always round out my newsletter with what I call fun bits. And this is one where you just have to look at the photo. But I propose a new Bitcoin price tracker, which is Wences Casares' hair. Xapo CEO Wences Casares spoke on a panel while sporting basically a huge fro. And Vijay Boyapati tweeted, quote, "I personally cannot wait to see what Wences' hair will look like when Bitcoin hits 100K. So that's it for this week's news. To learn more about the topics that Deborah and I discussed, as well as the stories from this week's news recap, be sure to share the links in the show notes of your podcast player. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Unconfirmed is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Fractal Recording, Anthony Yoon, Daniel Ness, and Josh Durham. Thanks for listening.